in this world of wonder. Circle where we all belong. Voice of 1,000 tribes. Tunza. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Pulse of the human heart. Tunza. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong.
Circle where we all are free. Circle where we all belong.
Where we all belong. Where we all belong. Where we all belong.
On today's show, Eat Chocolate and Change the World, we're going to be interviewing Mary and Kwasi Wiredu, who grew up in Ghana, Africa, with fathers who were cocoa farmers. Then we'll go down to Sarasota, Florida, to talk to Sandy Ramsey, who owns an all-fair trade shop and sells fair trade chocolate. And then we're coming back here for this illustrious panel behind me to do the tasting. They're all certified chocoholics, and they're looking forward to getting into their chocolate this evening and letting us know what tastes good to them. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, I am delighted to introduce you to two people who grew up actually on cocoa farms in Ghana, Africa, and are going to talk a little bit about that experience as well as the trade situation. Dr. Kwasi Wiredu and his wife Mary. Hello.
Hi,
Thank you so much for being here.
we're glad to be here.
Mary, I'm going to begin with you because I spoke with you earlier on the phone about your experiences of being growing up in Africa. Were you living on the cocoa farm with your dad? Where were you, or tell me more about your relationship with your dad and the farm itself.
Okay, because I was going to school, I was not living 365 days with my dad. But on my vacations, I visited him and I went to the farm with him every day, except Sundays. And worked on the farm as children normally do in our culture. When your parents go to the farms, you accompany them and you work with them on the farms.
So you had the experience of actually being there.
Yes, I have the experience of being there. I had the experience of actually planting cocoa seedlings.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So,
And earlier you told me the seedlings take how long?
10 years. This is a fact that people do not know, that when you make an investment in the cocoa farm, in those days, the seedlings took 10 years before a farmer could reap any benefit. 10 years for the tree
Wow.
to come to fruition. So
there was
meanwhile, during the period, you had to fend for yourself because you didn't get any income from the cocoa farm, from the investment.
Well, how did people survive during that time?
Well, they planted foodstuffs. They lived on bush meat, fish from the rivers.
Okay.
They survived.
So they barely survived. They had enough food to eat,
To
but
eat,
not
yes.
much else.
Yes.
And Kwasi, what about your experience growing up with your dad as a cocoa farmer? Did you live on the farm, or?
I did live on the farm earlier in my life before I went to school. But at some point in my schooling, I was very far away from the farm, so I only visited my father during vacations.
Kwasi, I just wanted to start with you and ask you, and then I'll be asking you, Mary, what are your memories of the farm, life on the farm, for the people who were there? What were the conditions like?
I have very pleasant memories of those days. My father was a very hardworking person, and he had assistants, there were people that helped him, and they were all extremely friendly. And I was always very, very happy to be with them on the farm, especially during the times when they were actually scooping out the beans from the cocoa pods. That is a special occasion. Your own people gathered, and the people in your neighborhood also came. There was a kind of mutual aid situation.
Yes.
They all came around, and they will sing and so on, and they'll help. They'll help you to scoop out the beans.
Right.
Of course, when the time comes for them to do this, you will go and help them.
Right. So a very cooperative agreement among the
Yes.
farmers. And it sounds like you experienced a sense of community as well
Yes.
during that time.
Yes, that was a cultural trade.
Right.
There's a certain kind of community feeling,
Right.
which is translated into actual help,
Right.
mutual help.
Mary, let me ask you about what you saw, what conditions were people living with on the farm?
Okay. My experiences, since my dad was a beginning cocoa farmer, we got every day when I was there, we got up early in the morning. We went to the farm. We worked till about 11:30, 12. We broke off, made lunch, cooked our lunch in the farms, and after lunch, we continued to work till maybe 5, and then we came home to cook the evening meal. And after evening meal, we went to bed.
You were very tired after a long
Yes,
day.
and
Goodness.
then yes.
And I know you were there on vacations. What about, and you went away to go to school, because my understanding is there wasn't a school close to the cocoa farm.
No, there were no schools close to where my father was farming. Indeed, the nearest town was 14 miles away. So there was no school. There were no activities except go to farm, come back home, cook dinner, go to bed, and do it again the following morning.
Let me just ask you another question about that then. What about the families who were there all the time with children? Does that mean that children were not going to school? They were working day in and week in all day during the year?
Well, the place that my father farmed, there were no children going to school because, as I said, there were no schools.
Right.
There were no schools.
So they had full days in the field, and
Yes, there were no schools.
it sounds like the women did a lot of work. They were cooking and in the field, or did they take the day off and just
No,
cook?
no.
I didn't think so.
Indeed, after farming, when we came home, the men rested, and then the women did the cooking, with the children's help, of course.
Let me just ask you, Kwasi, about the trade that goes on with cocoa beans right now. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and the international trade, and who sets the prices and what happens there?
The farmers sold their cocoa not directly to the international groups and so on, but to a body that had been set up by the government. And it was that body that then sent the cocoa to the international market and got the payments and so on. Now, usually the government paid a little less to the farmers than they received from the merchants and so on, because they needed money for development, and that is one major source of money to the government, because cocoa was our largest foreign exchange earner. And so it seemed reasonable from the point of view, at least of the government and a lot of people, that it is good to set aside some of the money for developing the country. But now the prices that were given to at which the cocoa was sold were fixed by international trading concerns, usually from the Western world. So they sold the cocoa to us at the prices that they themselves fixed. So they bought the cocoa, not sold. They bought the cocoa from us at prices that they themselves fixed.
That gave them a good profit.
Yeah, and then when they had made products like chocolate and stuff like that, they sold them to us at prices that they themselves fixed.
Oh my!
So, it was a game that they controlled right from the beginning.
Yes. So, given that situation, do you think that those the farmers and their families who were working in those fields were getting paid fairly for the work that they were doing, given the price that was paid for the cocoa?
Well, it's difficult to evaluate, but in general terms, that is a situation that doesn't guarantee fairness when they set their own prices to buy your product and sell finished products to you at prices that they fix themselves.
Right. Mary, what were you saying?
Yeah, and to add to this, I was reading a paper on the net, one of the Ghanaian papers, and indeed a member of parliament was complaining only this month that the farmers are living below poverty level.
Just as they were doing 50 years ago.
Just like
No, actually, it was better 50 years ago.
Was
The
it?
situation has been getting worse all the
because
time.
the prices of things go up all the time.
Ah, so it hasn't changed
It hasn't
for the better
changed
at
for
all.
the better at all. I just read it
And you read that in a Ghanaian paper.
in a
Plight of cocoa farmers
It's
is
very horrible.
very horrible.
And this is from a member of parliament.
And I understand that you were also reading that there is still child slave labor going on in the cocoa farms.
Well, I read this only yesterday, that an officer of Ghana's Cocoa Board, this is the organization that buys the cocoa from the farmers and sell on the world market. An officer was saying that child labor in the cocoa farms should be stopped, and that instead of children going to school to continue with their education, they are working on these farms, and the children are the future leaders of the country.
Right.
And if I might add something to this,
Certainly.
this wasn't so at all, say, when I was growing up. At that time, there was no child labor. I mean, you went to the farm with your father,
With your
but
family,
you
yes.
went
It's with your family.
farm labor. But now, it is now that this thing is happening. That the little children are being exploited
Yes,
on the farms. Yes.
And dangerously so, I understand, with the use of pesticides and there's machetes and very dangerous situations, as well as not having any future, like you're saying, or life of their own. Yeah, it's a very sad state of affairs. What do you think could be done to turn that around, to make it better? Do you have any ideas? I know I'm...
Well, I think that, first of all, the farmers need to be paid a little better than now. Although, as I suggested to start with, it's reasonable for a government to try to use part of the gains from the product to develop the country. I think that it is important that the farmers should get a very good amount.
And that would depend on the prices of cocoa on the world market.
That are being set by the commodity buyers who are buying up the cocoa.
Because if they're well paid, then they can make better arrangements for the production.
Right.
In our culture, we do have various arrangements. For example, you can get a lot of people to come and help you and get 1/3 of the proceeds at the end of the year. So the person that owns the farm gets 2/3 and you get 1/3. And that was quite popular, quite a popular way of doing this kind of thing. But if they're very poorly paid and they don't have much from this, then they might think of other alternatives like exploiting children.
Right,
Yes.
and that's exactly what's
Yes,
happening.
because the adults don't want to work on the farms. The pay is not good.
Ah,
Yes.
so it's the children that are it's falling to. I want to thank you both so much for taking time to be here today. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Kwasi.
Thank you.
You're
Great
welcome.
pleasure. Great pleasure.
Hello, I'd like to introduce you to a very funny person, but Sandy Ramsey is the director of Artisans World Marketplace in Sarasota, which is the only all fair trade store in Sarasota. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Jan.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Tell us a little bit, Sandy, about how you ended up doing fair trade. What was your introduction to it and your path to this place?
I started volunteering in a similar store, and I thought it was great. I used to watch the nightly news and see all the starvation in the world, and I would think, I'm one person, what can I do? And I found out through this program I can have direct impact on a life halfway around the world just in how I shop.
It is just beautiful. I mean, and such a wonderful, warm feeling when you walk through the door, too, with all the beautiful things from good people.
Yes, I think that's what you feel.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about fair trade. What does it mean if something is marked fair trade certified? What can we count on if we buy that?
Basically, it means that the artisan who made it or the farmer who produced it has been paid a fair wage based on local conditions and economy.
All right, Sandy, let's just take a look then. What does fair trade certified mean when we're looking at your chocolate product here in the store? I understand that the cocoa farms are leveling the land in order to get the sun. So is that what is happening here? Or?
No, it would be shade-grown cocoa. And some of that, you're looking at, we also do products that protect the rainforest. And if you're looking at a family that destroys the rainforest, that's not really what you want them to do. But you have to understand that they want to feed their families. And sometimes this is the only way that they can do it. So we have to come in with a better way and show them what is better. That protecting the rainforest, protecting the land, actually will produce more for them in the end.
So it's sustainable for them as well as for the land. And what about child slave labor? Is that?
You don't find that in fair trade.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
That's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
Very good thing. Well, let's talk a little bit then about your chocolate. I'd love to taste it with you, but we're going to have a Chocoholic tasting panel later,
okay.
so who's going to give us, their feedback on your chocolate. What kind of chocolate do you carry here?
We carry the Divine chocolate out of Ghana.
Why?
The cocoa bean farmers are paid fairly. They own 1/3 of the cooperative. They share in 2/3 of the profits.
Really?
Yes, it's put together in Germany, so it's that wonderful, smooth European chocolate. And I always like to tell my customers, when you're doing good things, it voids the calories.
I had heard about cocoa farmers who were part of a co-op that owned a chocolate manufacturing plant in Germany. Is that who?
Day Chocolate Company, yes.
What?
Day Chocolate Company.
Day Chocolate
Yes.
Company, and they sell Divine chocolate.
Right.
Now, can I get chocolate in all forms, or do I have to eat just the dark chocolate, which is not one of my favorites?
Well, it's not one of my favorites either, but it is good for your heart. But the Divine comes in the dark chocolate. It comes in milk chocolate. One that's really bad, it comes in milk chocolate with hazelnut, and I always tell my customers that because that's my favorite, so I really don't want to sell it. And it comes in white chocolate.
And I understand you can't get this all year round here.
Well, one of the organization, actually, a greater gift that brings it in, when we first started to carry it, they didn't ship it in the summertime because it would be in little puddles in the UPS truck. And so now that there's such a demand, they have gone to shipping with ice packs. And that's been working so that you can get it in the summertime now.
How do we know that something truly is fair trade? I mean, is there an entity doing this that's going out there and monitoring, or how can we trust it?
There's about 17 organizations that are involved in the labeling of fair trade, but fair trade has been in existence for over 50 years, and they set certain criteria. We joined the Fair Trade Federation when we first opened, not because they had a unique idea, but having that plaque to hang on our wall tells you as a consumer is that we can't carry anything that's not fairly traded in our store, even if we wanted to. You're only allowed to use the Fair Trade logo if you are a member.
Oh, I see.
And those organizations, for want of a better word, police the cooperatives that are fair trade, making sure that they follow the guidelines, that there's no child labor, slave labor, that type of thing.
So they actually go out and
Right,
they're on
right,
site.
Right.
Very good.
We couldn't do that as a small store. We started with $800, so we couldn't, I mean, that's not a whole lot of money to travel on, and so you certainly couldn't, even if you got into the country, you couldn't get back out with product.
Right.
So our board has voted that we only deal with members of the Fair Trade Federation, Aid to Artisans, or the Craft Center out of Washington, D.C., because they set the guidelines and make sure that these things are happening.
Good. I know that you are selling fair trade items. At the same time, I also know that you go above and beyond with the millions of dollars that flows through here every year.
Oh, right, yes.
So, well, first of all, let me just ask, are you at all profitable here, or?
No, we've not made a profit in the 9 years that we've been open. Being a nonprofit organization doesn't mean you can't make a profit. It means your profits are funneled back into the work. But we voted that we were going to do that before the end of the year. So each month we take a cooperative and we funnel a grant into that cooperative.
Wow. How much, what would you say the percentage of the money that comes in here goes out in grants?
Well, we set a price of 10%.
Okay.
You know, at the end of each month, 10% we funnel back into some
Cooperative in Africa or
yes.
someplace. And what does that then do? I mean, what does that come down to as far as money and benefits that it gives?
Well, when I buy the product, that provides the jobs. When we funnel the grants back through the organization, that provides the medical care, scholarships, builds the village school, digs the village well, provides school money for a little boy in Guatemala that's blind and his mother can't afford to send him to school. Whenever we do a scholarship, I always wonder if maybe that's going to be the researcher that finds the cure to cancer or AIDS or whatever.
You also gave me a figure earlier when we were talking before we were on camera about how much money it takes to feed a family of 4.
Well, actually, every $1,200 that we do in retail sales can provide an artisan in a developing country with work for 1 year and feed a family of 4.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
Now, I also want to share that we started 9 years ago with $800. Last year was a rough year with all the hurricanes, and you know, we had a lot of construction downtown Sarasota. But in 2003, we grossed over $98,000 and gave away over $10,000 in grants.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Isn't that neat?
Yes, it's very neat. What's your dream, Sandy?
To do $1 million in sales.
Well, I'm going to help you a bit. I'm going
You're gonna buy the
to
chocolate.
pile up on some chocolate
Yes.
before I leave, and also another gift here for my granddaughter. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with
Thank
us, and I'll definitely be back.
We'll be waiting for you.
I know you will. You're going to be addicting me to this
Yes,
chocolate. Yes,
we
I
try,
know. I
we
know.
try, yes.
Thanks, Sandy.
You're welcome.
My top score would be 13 on chocolate number 4.
My highest score is Divine Dark Chocolate. It was 15. It was straight 5s. I had a 14, and that was the Divine Milk Chocolate, and they're both fair trade. Thank you.
I had 15 for the Divine Dark Chocolate. I think it's very aptly named. And the second to that came in at number 10, and that was the Divine Milk Chocolate with hazelnuts.
Chocolate is serious business, and as citizens and consumers, you can have a tremendous impact on the chocolate industry in bringing it into alignment with the Earth Charter principles. Marion Kwasi talked about the child labor on the cocoa farms. Hundreds of thousands of children work on cocoa farms. 12,000 of them come there due to the trafficking of slaves. Impoverished cocoa farmers have no choice but to use their children and keep them out of school to work in the fields or even to use slave labor. What needs to be done, and the solution for this, is to increase the prices paid to cocoa farmers so that it is a sufficient and fair price, and to require monitoring of cocoa farms, and to require mandatory compliance by the cocoa and chocolate industry. M&M Mars is the largest candy and chocolate company in the world, with over $20 billion in revenues each year. They have the highest responsibility and the most resources to offer fair trade certified chocolate. In June in 2004, over 200 labor, faith-based, child labor, and student groups appealed to M&M Mars to do that. Today, they still continue to refuse to offer fair trade certified chocolate. A group of 4th graders in a school in New York took it upon themselves last year, the week before Easter, to do a boycott of M&M Mars, so that they told their parents. They did a big campaign in order to have an impact on the child labor. What you can do is you can buy fair trade chocolate. Look for the certification seal on the packet and go to transfairusa.org and find out the nearest local place where you can purchase chocolate. Also, you can get involved as an advocate, and you can go to globalexchange.org and find out about their many campaigns that also include campaigns for children and youth. Enjoy your chocolate. Just make sure it's fair trade.